The day reality changed. You're looking good. You are 3 steps above average. It feels good to be with you today, and I'm Kendall Brian Hunter. This is the Eyes of Faith podcast, and we're going to talk about the day reality changed. Donald Trump and election integrity. So, did you see the speech? How are you feeling about things? It feels like reality flipped. That we had a certain model and a certain general sense of how things were supposed to work, and suddenly saw the speech, and if what Donald Trump said is true, we're living in a different reality now. We've been having these discussions for a while about election integrity. You remember this, the Mueller report? Did you bother reading it? Did you read it or just talk about it, ignore it? Look at all those redactions there. Okay, the Mueller report was about Russia collusion and interference. So the conclusion was, yes, Russia did interfere with the, or didn't say there was persuasion on social media, but Donald Trump was not part of it. Then you had the Durham report, which said, yeah, the FBI was acting a little bit shady. Then this from President Trump's comes out, and wow. So there's really 4 points to it. Vulnerabilities in the electronic voting and ballot counting system. The hanging chads, you remember those? China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data. They'd buy this voter data information. It's public available, then compile this large list and target people from it. Michigan voter registration investigation. That's next to Minnesota, where they have the Smalley daycares. Is that right? If I get my geography right. Noncitizens on state voter rolls. 278,000 legal aliens, 250,000 non-citizens. Part of it was one of the scans I saw was the Chinese Communist Party used media outlets to stoke racial tensions, and you remember in General Conference when President Oaks talked about Black Lives Matter. I think the most damning quote is from Nikki Floris. She said, "I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI at this point. I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI at that point." How do you feel about that? Have we gotten so used to it? Are we just deadened to this? Is this become background noise? Kind of like that, when they're putting tar on the roof across the street and it gags you, but an hour later your nose just tunes it out. I use Mark Hamill as a bellwether, gauge how things are on the left, and before Trump said anything, he posted a rude picture, and well, Trump doesn't engage in rudeness himself, so tit for tat, 2 wrongs make a right. But it's ignoring things and blanking it out. See, people on the left, they make decisions based on emotion, and that's why you really can't argue with them. And it's not arguing with idiots or how to talk to a liberal if you must, Coulter and Glenn Beck, is that it's a question of validity. Emotional intensivity, emotional power, emotional thrust is what's valid, not facts. And so you can sway people with emotional pleas. There's a reason why conservatives like talk radio and the political left likes television, because the television gives you the visual, emotional visual, but the ears give you the intellectual and rational thing, because it's filtering out the emotion. But see what happened is you'd have to do a reframe with this, because if you were to accept the things that they say, they'd have to flip. Like I said, reality flipped. The reality changed with that broadcast of Donald Trump. Is that what we thought was real and what we thought was unreal is completely flipped around. It's the exact opposite. So Trump has one version of reality. The left tunes it out. because once you have to admit it, is that upsets your feelings. So the idea is just shut your brain down. You occasionally see this with people because as you talk with them, the eyes glaze over, the screensaver pops up, you see all these flying toasters and they're ignoring what you're saying. That happens sometimes where people just tune you out or they respond to something that you're not saying. They have a conversation in their head, which is not the same one in reality. But that seems to be the left. It's just background noise where they just ignore it and go on. Or keep chanting Trump's a fascist. Judge Thomas B. Griffith, he was part of a study called Lost Not Stolen. He did a report, and I recommend reading that report. It's still up. You can download the PDF. But he analyzed the cases that Trump brought against the election integrity for the 2020 election. But they did not have access to these classified documents that have now been declassified. So just as a matter of integrity, I hope the Honorable Thomas B. Griffith he gets involved with an update. So they keep the original study up there for transparency's sake, but also for transparency, okay, we did this, but with this information that Trump has declassified, how does our conclusion change? Do a follow-up report. I mean, ethically, I feel like you're obligated to do that. Here's an idea. So we all agree that there's widespread welfare fraud, and it's just not limited to the Somali immigrant community, but it's a business model crime model that's been adopted by other people, so it's been used around the country. So you bet that fraud is going on, but there's nothing wrong with their electoral system. And both those things are happening simultaneously. Yeah, welfare fraud, but nothing is wrong with our election system, doesn't have any problems with it. The Book of Mormon Lens. What's the Book of Mormon Lens when you read this? Infiltration, government corrupt laws, sole management of the government. That's in the Book of Helaman. If you've read the Book of Mormon and you take what Trump is saying seriously and you're not tuning it out, you should be in a cold sweat right now. But also that crisis is the doorknob on the door of opportunity. It gives you a chance to act and to think about things. But yeah, if you're reading the Book of Mormon, if you've studied the Book of Mormon, there's a specific pattern and model that's happening right now in this new reality, the new normal, if we can coin a term. So I'm not coming to any conclusions. That's up to the people, Brethren and General Conference, and our church leaders to do that. But there is a certain pattern you're noticing here. Warfront. Like all of you, I have no idea what's going on. It's a stop. It's certainly less bloody when you study the battles of World War I and World War II. The other famous battles, Pork Chop Hill, Gettysburg, these other battles. It's certainly less American casualties. Don't quote me on this, but I think there's been more accidents rather than combat casualties, and that's a positive. We're on the verge of, we're having drone wars right now. We're on the verge of having robot wars where we're sending Terminators out to fight each other. And that may actually be a positive if you're concerned about human life, but it should scare you a bit with quantum computers, AI, and robots. So, news blips. Let's go to just the quick news blips. This is from Yahoo Finance. New York's housing crisis hits DEFCON 1. Comptroller warns as rents surge to record high. Is Mom Donnie's plan working? His plan could only go one direction. It's the snake oil salesman. He promises the moon, and all he delivers is a lump of green cheese. It has never worked. It does not work. I visited Russia in 1992, 6 months after the collapse of the Soviet Union. I saw with my own eyes what happens when you do things this way. I lived in California in the 70s and 80s, very close to Silicon Valley. Reality only functions a certain way, and we're aligning our views with objective reality here. When you have with Trump's message, when you look at what's going on with New York and the housing, it can only go one way. There's only one way it goes. It doesn't work the other way, regardless of your wishful thinking. Rashida Tlaib, I think that's how you pronounce her name. I served a mission in Portugal, so I had 2 years of people making fun of my name. Democrat Representative Rashida T., the political structures that we are surrounded by were built on slavery and genocide and oppression. Look at the room, mother effer. We aren't going anywhere. Now we're in Congress and in every corner of the United States. She uses that expression a lot, mother effer. You remember when she was elected, we're going to impeach that mother. Yeah, well, not only did you impeach him, you impeached him twice, but you just couldn't get rid of him. I think that's an expression, so I'm not going to make any jokes about a Freudian slip here. We're using that expression a lot. It is a psychological tell, but she uses inflammatory language. And you remember what President Nelson said about losing the moral rectitude of woman? This is another thing about her presence. She has a very loud voice. She certainly has energy. And I tend to do a low energy one. I'm a voice of calmness here. I'm not shouting and talking with the intense. I want you to feel a little bit relaxed here. This is psychological well-being. When I say stands on its own, I don't need to change my voice around or, take an energy drink before I go on to have energy to do this. When I say stands on its own, and if what I'm saying is right, you'll feel it's right and you'll know it's right. She has a loud voice. She certainly has energy. She takes a sharp tone, and she uses expletives. You see, that's why she had to garner attention. Now, I try and keep this family friendly, but there's a certain beauty bias that she has. We know what it is. Even Rush Limbaugh commented on it. But that adds to her mix. But you see, it's an interesting physical characteristic mix. You see why people would vote for her just based on her appearance. You look at me, I'm just bald and with glasses. I'm wearing this Linus T-shirt here. But I hope you can see past and just feel what I'm saying, whether it's true or not. But it's interesting. High energy, expletives, loud voice. Isn't that what Donald Trump does? He gets criticized for that, but isn't she following the Donald Trump model? Now here's something else. This is a little bit more psychological, and if you're into Jungian psychology, you may appreciate this. What archetype is she tapping into? Which has this appearance. Well, certainly she's doing the angry woman, and some men who are really henpecked. What they do is say, give her what she wants, and you'll have peace in the house. De-escalate. I'll just give her whatever she wants. She'll calm down, then we'll have a normal house. That's one model, but another one is, think about this. Okay, the archetype she's tapping into is, mommy is really angry right now. She's in a position of authority like her mom was, and she's really angry. And those of you who had an irrational or abusive mother, which we sometimes don't talk enough about, if you had an irrational, abusive mother and you could never please her, the archetype she's tapping into, yeah, that's going to work on you. You're just on a very deep limbic system, reptile brain level. You're just going to respond to what she says to you because you grew up with that and you realize, okay, doing what she says, I'll make the problem go away. And it's a challenge to overcome that negative program you may have had. Fortunately, there's always help. If you grew up in that household, help and healing in Jesus Christ. Another thing is, it had safety for the Supreme Court. That's always a good question. Does that, here, once again, the Book of Mormon. Does that remind you of the Book of Mormon? Chief Justices being killed, Getty and robbers. That seemed a little bit familiar. So yeah, that should, if you've referred to the Book of Mormon, you should be waking up every morning in a cold sweat, because we know the direction the culture and history is going. But it's interesting. You notice they had Justice Kagan, who's liberal, Justice Barrett, who's conservative, so they had balance there. But you notice, I'm confident you saw what was going on. You picked up on the psyop that's going on. Two women who are talking about how they're in danger. And whether you believe in evolution or whether you believe in creation, you know that we have this instinct to protect women. So you had two females saying, hey, we're in danger. And you just can't resist that instinctive idea. Even if the woman's a combatant, she's a mixed martial artist of the hexagonal ring. who's that actress that got fired from The Mandalorian? I can't remember her name. Gina Carano, I think that's her name. Even her, you're going to have an instinctive reaction to protect her. Men protecting women and women protecting other women. But here's something else. This is about the beauty bias file. Justice Barris has a very high-pitched voice. To think about it, just shut your eyes and listen to her talk, and you notice it. And if you've ever seen the test reels that George Lucas had for Star Wars, what they now call Episode 4, this is the version of Star Wars where hand shot first. You have a lot of people testing for the role of Princess Leia. And as you watch it, you'll have these different actresses. One was Cindy Williams, who played Shirley on Laverne and Shirley. But Cindy Williams has really a high-pitched feminine voice. When you hear Carrie Fisher, there's two things. There's one, she's able to read the technobabble really well, and that's always an asset in sci-fi. You get a female, that's probably one of the things you have to do is when you're casting for a sci-fi picture, just put a bunch of technobabbles. Okay, can you read this? And so the people are really good with it. And Carrie Fisher was good with the technobabble. But also, she has a deeper voice, so it sounds more authoritative, more resonant. Same thing with Rashida Tlaib. She has that. Well, she has a louder voice, and she's able to use her voice well and to use it to intimidate people, and using the cursing. But that's how Carrie Fisher got the. I think how she did is she was able to do the technobabble, but the deep voice that Justice Barrett doesn't have, and so she sounds like a little girl who's lost, and it's a psyop to get us to protect the judges. So that's how you're going with Justice Kagan. She also has a deeper voice. So here we are, it's 16 minutes. Let's keep this a little bit brief. Not surprising news. The mainstream media ignored Trump's speech. They stopped the clock to do Joe Biden's Darth Vader speech, if you remember that. But when he's marshaling the forces, the Sith Lord speech, if you remember, Donald Trump says this, it gets ignored. That's also part of the psyop. It's an obliviating tactic. If people aren't aware of a problem, then they can't act on it, and so you suppress news so people aren't aware of problems. A form of denial. The Odyssey. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So it's a classic, been made into movies several times. I read, I think it was the Arrow translation. They have the Arrow's translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's like they have these illustrations that look like they're done by Picasso. I don't think he did them, but they're fun to look at. They're absolutely fun to look at, the illustrations they added to the text. So I think it's Fitzgerald was a translator. Well, the Deseret News published an opinion piece from a BYU professor named Andrew Wells, and he talks about it has a pro-family message with it, and that's correct. The Odyssey, there's three of the main women in there. Is you have Circe, who's the witch, turns the sailors into pigs. You have Calypso, who's the nymph who entraps Odysseus, and Odysseus. It's interesting seeing Bruce C. Hafen talked about in his book, The Belonging Heart, where he's on the island, he wants to get home, and he's just, yeah. Then you have Odysseus' wife, Penelope, who has all these suitors because they want to get the land. And so she's at the loom, I should say, not the womb, but the loom, weaving a tapestry or a cloth. She says, okay, once I get done, I'll make a decision. So she weaves it, and then each night she unravels what she weaves, so she keeps doing it over and over again. Telemachus, Odysseus' son, is loyal to him, and son of a gun, Odysseus' dog, is also loyal to him. There's a scene I'm not spoiling. Okay, what happens? Odysseus comes home, and he's in disguise, and how they recognize him is that he has a wound in his leg, and so everyone knows who it's him because he's aged 20 years, 10 years with the Trojan War and 10 years on the Odyssey. He comes home, he's in disguise, but sort of again, his dog recognizes him. That's a nice touch. It's like that. There's an episode of The Twilight Zone. I can't remember what it is, but there's this old guy. It's sort of a hillbilly story where old guy, he's died, and he's walking along with his dog, and he goes to this person. And this guy says, oh yeah, this is the way to heaven. And the dog starts growling. And so the guy says, look, I'm not sure if I can't bring my dog into heaven, I don't want to go there. If he keeps walking down the road, he goes there, and the next guy comes by, the dog bends down, starts scratching the dog, and what happens? That's how he's able to detect which is the gate to hell, which is the gate to heaven. Is his dog. It's the same thing in the Odyssey. The dog recognizes him. So I agree that it has a nice family message to it. But he says, Professor Wells, I'm also looking forward to the film. I think this is interesting. I'm old enough to know when in General Conference the Brethren warned us about watching R-rated movies. Elder H. Burke Peterson said this, I know it is hard counsel we give when we say movies that are R-rated and many with PG-13 ratings are produced by satanic influences. Movies that are R-rated are produced by satanic influences. Elder H. Burke Peterson, October 1993 General Conference. And that's puzzled me because the R rating is a barrier to me. Fortunately, you can. Back in the 1950s, Kirk Douglas did a sword and sandal version of the Odyssey. It was done in Italy, so there's two versions of it. There's this one where it's done in Italian, and I think that's Kirk Douglas' voice is overdubbed, but then they did an American release where they overdubbed it in English. I was watching one where it had the subtitles. It's like, I wanted to watch it while I was folding laundry, but you have to read the subtitles, so I wasn't able to watch it. But I do own an English copy of it. It's interesting, at that time, sword and sandal movies were like, biblical epics, take mythological stories. I think it's Steve Reeves. That was the name. There's a American bodybuilder named Steve Reeves, and so he'd go to Italy and he'd do these ones where he'd play Hercules, a little bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger did. But Italy, since they had the ruins there, all the ancient structures, they could just fill it there on really cheap, and then overdub it and send it back to America and make a lot of money and fill a need there. But yeah, you have that version with Kirk Douglas, and I recommend it. It's rated R for a reason. Okay. And how does a rated R movie lead you to Christ? How does a rated R movie lead you to Christ? So I'm choosing not to see it. I will comment on it. I will recommend reading both the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm not going to get into the Homer question. Someone had to write it, or several persons. How these things go. It just got attached to Homer, so let's just run with it. I'd like to make a comment on it. Is that the Critical Drinker... He's a movie commentator from Scotland, so it's just fun listening to his accent too. His talk about controversy, controversy, and this apparently in the United Kingdom they say it controversy. Aren't you jealous? But he talked about the double standard. Is that they're very precise, like with the Moana movie that came out. Very precise about having Polynesian cultural consultants there to make sure they're doing nothing offensive, making sure that it's accurate. And that's with ethnic movies, is keep it that way. On the other hand, when they do white ones, they do this race swapping and gender swapping thing. They did it with Battlestar Galactica. But when it's white thing like Shakespeare, they'll do the race swap. Now it's a bit interesting, and the Critical Drinker's concern was, is this a double standard? And I think it actually is that because you're doing some really strange things. For example, here in Utah, in Provo, there's this musical called 1820, the musical. They called him a lunatic, and what they did with it was part of this, a little bit like with the Hamilton musical, where they're all non-white except King George, who's white, but they race swapped most of the cast there, and so there's a trend that had been going on. So they applied that to a musical, and so they have a blonde Emma Smith, and Emma Smith was brunette. In fact, if you see Joseph Smith was very light complexion, light hair, blue eyes. Emma was brunette with brown eyes, so those are the recessive genes. So Joseph Smith III, he looks like Keanu Reeves if you see pictures of him, because he had all of Emma's features on it. But for the movie, they had a blonde actress, and once again the beauty bias. Let's Hey, yeah, that's the beauty virus is the beauty bias is a beauty virus. Blonde Emma Smith, and then for Hiram Smith they cast a black actor. So I'm kind of curious. The problem is it hit COVID-19, came out, so that's what killed it. So we don't have a good understanding of what would have happened if this had been able to progress naturally, how long this would have gone on. But when you see these historical inaccuracies, and the Critical Drinker catalogs a lot more, since I don't watch these, for me they're a waste of time to watch these things where they're historically inaccurate. What's the motive? What's the motive for having casting a blonde Emma Smith as a blonde instead of a brunette with the historically accurate dark features? Casting a black actor for Hiram Smith. What's the motive in doing that? What are you hoping to accomplish? And comment in the comment sections below for an answer on that. We're at half an hour. As I was preparing, let me tell you how I do this. Is on my phone, I'll have a file opened up, and throughout the week when I catch news stories, I'll put a little note in there and then link to the files on it. So when I come here on Friday or on Saturday when I do this, I'll just cut and paste it out. So it's a project something I do over the week, just ideas that come to me. So it's a simple system, but it saves some time. Which is throughout the week you're having a notebook on your phone, and then you can go to your desktop and cut and paste it, and email the script to read it off my phone here. So life, some pointers. Last time I talked was about windfalls, as I got a windfall check from work, and I remind you, make sure you save some of it, that you save 100% of it, and you just penny pinch things off there, so you're always saving money, you're always saving for a rainy day, and you're not giving into the impulsivity. Odyssey, Greek philosophy, is Plato had this analogy that you're like a charioteer. You're holding a chariot and you have two horses. A white horse, that's the reasonable thing. They have a black horse, which is the wild and rambunctious one. And some people just love that wild, rambunctious, the physical stimulation of that rambunctious horse. But it just gets you into trouble. I think one of the patriarchal blessings in the book of Genesis was unstable as water, thou shalt never prosper. I think that was maybe in Reuben. But people get in there and they get caught up in the impulsivity and legitimate feelings of generosity, but they're not planning for the future. Counting the cost, being generous is a good use of your money. Counting the cost, as Jesus Christ said. Right here in the Bible, the Holy Bible. Well, it's even King James Version. Not one of these new funky monkey translations. Counting the cost and planning ahead, that's also a principle that Jesus Christ taught. And some people just kind of blank out on that. But here's my advice to you. Here's a point around life. When you're in college, when you go shopping, first of all, 100% of the time, have a shopping list, and also make sure you eat something before you go shopping. You've probably heard this. It's true. You know it's true. You're hungry, and just buy all this stuff. So you have a shopping list. And so the first place when you go shopping is you go shopping at a thrift store. Salvation Army, Goodwill, Deseret Industries. Then you will go to the dollar store. Then you go to the normal store. That's how you save money. You save your money. So you live within the budget of your paycheck, but you're also saving for the future. Think about this. If on every purchase you could save $1, like when you go shopping, say, okay, I bought, like I use Walmart, so buy 41 items. Let's say that you could save $41. You took those $41, put it into a money market account or a Standard & Poor's 500 account. How rich are you going to be in the future? Just imagine yourself. Imagine how you feel with all that extra money there on hand. So when you're older and you're going blind and your body's breaking down, or you slip on the ice, or you hit your elbow funny and you have to go to the doctor, having that money on hand, and that's a legitimate use. I mean, sure, there's poor people, but you have to use wisdom and order when helping the poor people. Imagine if you have all that extra money on hand so you don't have to worry about it. Health savings account. Health savings account. How's that working for you? So go shopping at thrift store when you need stuff. See this cup? How much you say this is worth? I got it at a thrift store for $4. How much money did I save, and how much money did I have to, so in the future I'm not having to worry about things. E-devotional. E-devotional, this is chapel time, right? I leave with a spiritual thought. And just a reminder that I have published this book called Consider My Servant Job. It's a book on Job in the Old Testament. And, you know, I don't do theme songs. I don't do this like, share, subscribe type thing. If you already know that, that's routine if you feel comfortable doing that. I do talk about this book. It's about suffering, pain, dealing with crises in life. Not just personal crises, but the cultural crises. What's going on with this obvious infiltration of our electoral system. That's a crisis. That's a problem. That's a trial. I mean, Job's trials, that was for himself, but we're all dealing with this issue of election safety and election integrity. But this is a message. This is the third time the Book of Mormon. We're living in the days predicted by the Book of Mormon. Judicial safety, that's an issue. Corrupt laws. Sole management of government with the Gadiant and robbers. In the space of not many years, that's a frequent phrase in the Book of Helaman. There's some sort of cultural accelerator going on. I don't know what it was among the Nephites. It's the size of the population is one place of what the mass media was among the Nephites. And us, it's social media. That's our cultural accelerator. That's what's speeding up thought, that this integration and this information dissemination, just shaping attitudes. It was, like I said, these files say the Chinese Communist Party was intentionally doing this. The Russians, two communist countries, one obviously communist and one sort of crypto-communist, influencing the thought process of millions of Americans. Manipulating your emotions, the feelings of pity and compassion, sometimes anger. All is well in Zion, rage against the truth. That's in the 2 Nephi 28. But yeah, we're being manipulated. So first of all, how do you resist manipulation? Well, the scriptures, immersing yourselves in the scriptures. I mean, if you have problems with email addiction, social media addiction, go back to the print scriptures so you can lock yourself in a room and then unplug. Really, your salvation is at stake, and the safety of the country is at stake, and the safety of civilization is at stake. But here's another thing to think about. What's one, not many, not a 3-point list, not a second set of 10 commandments, but just one small and simple thing you could do to make things right? What's one small and simple thing you could do to make things right? Well, here's a hint. You start with Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, that's the point. And that's the passing scene. Seen with the eyes of faith. Thank you, and bless you.